Christian here.
You are about to enter
111.
So, on this episode, we kind of want to delve into some of the pop culture that involves dreams and, the storylines that are based on dreams. Some of the ones that are the most notable, Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Nightmare on Elm Street, The Cell, Waking Life, Inception, which was inspired by Paprika.
Yeah. And there's a lot, actually. It's
so many.
These are the ones that kind of stuck out. Anyways, which films would you say had the biggest influence on you in terms of, questioning your dreamlike state?
Well, if we're going in chronological order, I'd say Nightmare on Elm Street was, one that kind of made way for how real can dreams really feel?
Yeah, not only that, but it was always, as a kid, you'd always be like, oh, Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
That name was very,
I mean, you have the catchy song, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. I mean, that, they say that was kind of based off of, some inspiration.
Yeah, it was inspired by actual events. People were apparently having dreams of this man who looked like a burn victim, and he would basically attack them in the dream, and they'd feel like scratching or clawing, and they'd actually wake up from it with actual scratches.
Yeah. And
some people even have reported, not sleeping at all after dreaming, of this weird being. So it's pretty crazy that it became like such a big pop culture, thing in the horror genre. Mm-hmm. Like they still release movies about him, right?
He's one of my favorite horror characters. I'll say that,
Yeah.
Freddy's always fun. But yeah, I think I told you, for a few years I was having only nightmares when I would dream. And I don't know, what the trigger was behind that. Mm-hmm. But I was, and they would always happen in the same places too. On the street that I grew up on, in the house that I grew up in, which is, and I still constantly am finding myself back in my childhood home, all the time. And
was it haunted?
As a kid, you thought it was haunted. Mm-hmm. Weird things would happen. We'd have family members that would come over, spend the night, and they would swear. I had a cousin, and I want to say my grandfather may have said the same thing, but they would feel either somebody had touched their foot or blankets pulled.
Ooh, that's creepy.
That it never happened to me though. I'll say that much. There were a couple weird instances that did occur. I remember one time I was laying down, and I did feel like someone sat on the bed.
I've had that experience.
You've had that?
I've had that at my childhood home in San Jose.
Yeah.
This is after my grandmother passed.
Yeah.
And it was always right as I was falling asleep. It felt like somebody either would sit down on the bed or somebody would get off of the bed.
Oh, that one's even creepier.
Because you could hear the springs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm and during that time I was younger. I was in junior high. And so hearing that, it was just oh my gosh. Talking about that house around that same time, I got chills. Oh my gosh.
What happened?
Goosebumps. So I know this is the last episode. We were talking about sleep paralysis, but I remember. Oh my gosh! You see it? It's chilly. I had the worst sleep paralysis experience there, and I remember back then I was probably a freshman or a sophomore in high school. And I fell asleep downstairs after we were watching movies. And my Uncle David, he wouldn't wake me up. He just let me sleep there. So he turned everything off. But how scary is it when, you know, like when you're in your room, you're in your bedroom, like you have your four walls and you just feel a little bit more secured, right? Than being out in the open. Like,
I know. I will say that, not to interrupt you, I hate falling asleep in like the living room or wherever, and like, oh, it's like hit or miss, but most of the time I hate falling asleep somewhere where it's not your room, and whoever is there with you like just lets you fall asleep there instead of like waking you up and like moving you to your room. Oh, I mean, they don't have to physically move you, but just be like, hey,
do you want to go?
You want to go to your room?
Yeah,
oh, that drives me nuts. Other times I do want to be left alone and just sleep, but which is probably why they do that.
So I recall, like, opening my eyes and it's completely dark, and I just feel like entities, like multiple ghosts, walking around where I'm laying. Yes, and it is so. Oh, it's so. It was so. You
felt
terrifying.
them or you saw them?
I didn't see them.
Oh, I
felt them.
Okay.
And again, it felt like I was outside my body, looking at myself, just laying there, which is not typical for me. It's like a weird. I don't know how to explain it. Like
you were astral traveling.
Like, yes, it's like you're sensing.
Oh, you were?
it.
Okay, I was kidding.
It's like you're sensing it, but you don't know if you're actually looking at yourself or if it's just imagined, right? But I just remember feeling like presence, like evil presence, walking around, and I'm trying to stay as still as possible. So that's the thing. Trying to stay as still as possible to make it look like I'm asleep and I'm not awake, so they don't.
Dude, that's so creepy.
So they don't pester.
That sounds like that scene in Insidious, where like, you know, they're astral traveling and like he's trying to find his son, and then like she's like, oh, but be careful because when you're away from your body, you know, other entities can like take over your body, right? That's what she was basically saying in the movie, and like they walk through. Was that part 1 or part 2? I don't remember. But like they're walking through like
that house, right?
The house, and there's just like random spirits everywhere. Like that's what that scene sounds like. Oh god, like
my right side is ice cold right now.
Oh god. Well, it's ice cold in your apartment, Anderson. So that's probably why. FYI, Anderson loves the cold. So here we are in 60-degree weather.
This is. I don't know why it triggered a memory, but I just remember how petrified I was. And I remember when I was laying there, I was like, just get up and move. Just go. Run upstairs. And like my heart's racing. And a part of me is just like, don't move.
Dude, that's so creepy.
Yes. And I'm trying to stay as still as possible.
Did you ever wake up and...
No, I think I just fell back asleep.
Oh, okay. So you stayed there the whole night? Nope. Couldn't be me.
I think I stayed there until light came up, and then I ran upstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like till the sun came up?
Yes.
Okay.
Till there was light.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do it in pitch black.
Yeah.
You know? So sorry, I digressed.
No, that's an interesting story though. I mean,
that came up because I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That
was really scary. But anyways, back to Freddy Krueger. What is is there anything based off of actual events that are like online or anything, like Google?
For Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah.
So I was trying to find what you just said. That's the original story that I heard, that like, you know, somewhere there was like a group of people
having the same dreams
of the same man.
So the crazy thing is, it's still going on now. Mm-hmm. Somebody actually drew. So this is like the last maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. Mm-hmm. Somebody drew this picture of this man, right, and posted it on the internet, and said, and in the caption said, "Have you seen this person in your dreams? This man that's been coming into your dreams." Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that were scared out of their minds because that figure was haunting everybody's dream. Yeah, like going around, and I was just.
But
like,
you know that I don't know how creeped out you could be by that concept if we just talked about sleep paralysis and how multiple people see similar things.
Yeah,
you
that's true.
see the hag, you see the shadowed figure, you see, you know, the aliens. So it's got to be something that's like
Maybe it's like a collective.
Yeah,
collective thing that everybody's just.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the Google explanation for that Freddy Krueger?
So when I Googled it, I can't find the story that I'm familiar with, that you're familiar with, but I did see something that said, in an interview with Vulture, filmmaker Wes Craven revealed that A Nightmare on Elm Street plot was inspired by an article that he read in the LA Times. It was about a family who escaped the killing fields in Cambodia and managed to get to the United States of America. The article goes on to, I think, describe like some of the events that the family had encountered. But have you heard that theory?
Never. And I've never even heard it in the Cambodian community.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Fun fact, by the way, when I was about 4 years old, the first movie that my father took me to go watch in the movie theaters was A Nightmare on Elm Street, probably part 2. It was like 1987, 86 maybe. Mm-hmm. I was like 3 or 4 years. I think I was 4. So maybe it was part 3. But yeah, that was the first movie. Good memory, right?
Good memory. I mean, that's a great movie to see as a child.
So all I remember is my dad buying me a bag of M&Ms with peanuts, and I wore his big coat, and the first 10 minutes, I knocked out. That was it. I ate some M&Ms, looked at the screen, and then lights out.
Wow, that's really cool. So let me redo the thing here. Okay. So it says, in an interview with Vulture, filmmaker Wes Craven revealed that A Nightmare on Elm Street plot was inspired by an article that he read in the LA Times. It was about a family who escaped the killing fields in Cambodia and managed to get to the United States of America. He stated that things were fine for them, and then suddenly their young son was having very disturbing nightmares. The kid told his parents he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him, so he tried to stay awake for days at a time. So that's kind of... But I really feel like I've heard the same exact... I just... Maybe I'm not typing in the right keywords into Google.
Even like when I was in high school, my teacher, he took a class at UC Davis on the paranormal. And that was one of the cases that they looked at. It was a case on Freddy Krueger. Mm-hmm. Well, his name wasn't Freddy Krueger, but it was based off of the inspired... Yeah. People were having dreams of this burned man who was clawing them, mm-hmm. and he was like infiltrating everybody's dreams, and he was doing this. I don't know if it was like a certain group of people or, in the same region, in the same area. I don't know, but...
Yeah, and I've heard that same story. I'll have to look for that. But I mean, if you guys have any, links you want to share to that same story, please.
Or have heard anything similar.
Or unless the Mandela effect is happening here.
Yeah, that sounds so far out.
I've never heard this.
Freddy Krueger was inspired by a Cambodian family escaping the killing fields. Like, what does that have anything to do with Freddy Krueger?
Small side note, funnily enough, speaking of Wes Craven, I think I told you earlier today that, I watched the latest Scream that was just released this year. And,
He directed it?
No, I mean, Wes Craven died back in 2015, but I just think it's kind of cool. I'm a big Wes Craven fan. Okay. So I appreciate some of his stuff. I mean, I love the first 3 Screams. Yeah. Past that, not so much. But anyway, Rest in peace, Wes Craven. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street was one that's, I think, always been like dream, inspired. Yeah.
What'd you think of Waking Life?
I liked Waking Life. The conversations, so it's all conversation based, and the concept is behind lucid dreaming. Our main character that we're following is basically in a lucid dream state the entire time. He sometimes he's not aware that he's dreaming, other times he is aware. I think like later in the film he becomes more aware that he's dreaming, but even in the moments that he realizes that he's dreaming, he kind of falls out of that. Yeah. But he's kind of going about his like day, and he can't figure out like why things are happening the way that they're happening. Like he can't read his clocks. Mm-hmm. And then like the people that he's talking to are basically just having these like profound convos about life and about Like, what's like one of the most memorable conversations you remember from that?
Like I said, I recall the Alex Jones segment. Where he's
that
just
was
like,
pretty funny.
you know, with the megaphone and he's shouting out stuff in Austin. Because it's Richard Linklater, you know, and he's out in Austin. So when he's making it, I'm sure, like, you know, Alex Jones was like, you know, a little standout character in Austin. He was doing that back in the day.
Yeah.
So, but it's a cool concept because, you know, they shot all of it on like mini DV, like digital, old school, like digital mini DV tapes, right? And then they took this film or the footage, and they basically colored over it, like cell shaded it with art. At the time when I saw the trailer, because I think it came out in like '98, I could not watch it because I thought it was so silly the way it looked, right? But I didn't know, you know, I didn't know what the concept was. I just remember seeing the trailer being like, who's gonna watch this? It's like a really bad looking cartoon for adults, you know, but not realizing that they had filmed it in a specific manner in order to make it look surreal, because your dreams, you don't know, you know, like people dream differently. Some people don't even dream in color. Yeah. Right? So
I will say that was the only thing, like, I like that he, you know, took that that step to just like give it that touch of like, you know, being in like a dreamlike state. But my distracted ass was just like, I was paying attention to the art, you know, just like the way the characters are moving, that sometimes I kind of caught myself paying more attention to the visuals than the conversations. Yeah. You know, that was the only thing that I was like, I'm not a big subtitle fan, I'll say that. Like, I mean, foreign language films are completely different. I prefer subbed versus dubbed. But when I'm, like, watching, like, you know, a movie in English, like, subtitles kind of distract me from, like, the visuals. Yeah. And I feel like this was the reverse. Like, I could have probably benefited from reading the subtitles to just get more in-depth into what they were saying. Because it was a little bit distracting, I will say that.
But the crazy thing about Waking Life is... so this character, he's walking through, like, his day, not realizing that he's asleep because everything feels authentic to him. And the conversations that he's, like, coming across are so in-depth and, you know, they just have so much substance to them. And I can honestly say that I can relate to it because I've had dreams where I've come across people having conversations and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't even understand this. But then, you know, you have to think, like, how did your mind even create that? Yeah. Like, that entire in-depth conversation between people you've never seen. Yeah. You know? And I think that was, like, on the surface of Waking Life, you feel like, yeah, he's just like, what? You know, he's confused. But it's all, like, fabricated in his head. So does that mean he's, like, a genius? You know? Like, really, like, if he's having these dialogues in his dream world that are so profound, does that mean he's, like, you know, he's a genius? Like, that's just really in his headspace.
Or maybe it's all programmed like it is in Vanilla Sky. You know, talk about another movie where, you know, like, when was the last time you watched Vanilla Sky? Do you kind of remember?
So I watched it when it first came out in theaters, and I was blown away. Yeah. Because I wasn't expecting it, and I bought the movie, but I don't think I watched it again.
Okay. I would definitely say rewatch it, because I just watched it recently, and for the first time. And yeah, same thing. I was blown away. And I know it's based off of, I have to look up the director's name. Do you remember the director's name of the original, the Spanish movie?
It was like, it was in... Like,
it had Penelope Cruz in it as well. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, same thing, same concept where, you know, Tom Cruise has no idea that he's basically living in this simulated world, you know, a world that he chose to
participate in.
Exactly. And that's even crazier, you know. But I mean, I get it. You know, it's something that he was holding on to, and that's another good one. Science of Sleep. I remember watching that in college.
Oh yeah, Science of Sleep was really cool. It's funny because that's a Michel Gondry film. Yeah. Yeah, my brother, he loves that film. Like, I remember when it came out, he was literally watching it like like once a week.
Really?
Yeah, because he just
That's really
it was
cool.
just like the quirkiness of
It's
Gael,
so different.
Gael
Yeah.
Garcia, you know, and it's just the way that Michel Gondry, his genius in like visuals,
you can appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's a really cool one.
The Cell. So I just rewatched The Cell recently.
The one with Vince Vaughn, right?
Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Lopez,
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah. He was our villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, our villain that, you sympathize for because, he had a rough childhood upbringing.
So go into the synopsis because I don't really recall. I just know somebody's a detective.
So Vince Vaughn is a detective. Vincent, our villain, he is a serial killer who's kidnapped a few women, and there's one currently missing. And they recruit Jennifer Lopez's company that she works for. She's like a child therapist who is working for a company that specializes in dream therapy.
Wow.
They put her under, they put the patient under, and they've created like this way of linking them in the same dream space. Typically, they put Jennifer Lopez in the patient's dream space, and she's helping them work through, like, the little boy that we see at the beginning of the film is in a coma. And so she's trying to help him come out of that coma. So they figure this is a good way to, because Vincent has gone into a similar coma state. He had like some kind of an attack. I don't know if it was a seizure or what it was, but he's basically also comatose, and they need to figure out where, his last victim is.
Gotcha.
So they recruit her to help, but you think about like going into the mind of a serial killer, like, probably not the best place to be.
Well, not even just the mind, but like their dream. Like,
yeah, like their
it's
world.
Nightmare. It's not like dreams. It's just straight nightmares.
Yeah. But damn, the visuals in that movie.
And that was an older film, right?
Yeah, that was like 90 something, 98 maybe, 2000. And like I said, I just rewatched it, and it's aged pretty well. Like, I mean, the visual effects are, obviously not up to 2022, but
back then, I remember
artwork.
Well, I just remember seeing it back then. It was just like so ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Like that scene where Jennifer Lopez is walking down those stairs and like, isn't her dress like opening up or something like that?
Depending on, I guess, which outfit she's wearing, but there's like a few.
I remember it was like a pivotal, like they always showed it in the trailers and stuff, where she's walking down these steps. Yeah. No, that was I haven't seen that in a while, but I totally forgot about that one.
Yeah.
One of my favorite dream type films is Inception. Christopher Nolan.
Great
just
movie.
Did such a good job on like the whole explanation of like stages of dreams too, because I've had that. Have you ever experienced that? False awakenings?
Oh, for sure.
So,
it's trippy.
So false awakenings are like where you wake up thinking like you're fully awake, but you're still in the dream state.
Yeah.
And I've had it go 3 tiers. And basically Inception kind of follows that same principle of the main character. And he's basically... It's kind of like The Cell, if you think about it. Right? Because they're trying to go into the mind of this business owner to see where he's locked up like this patent.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that essentially the...
It's been a little while since I've seen it, so you're going to have to like kind of recap.
Yeah, so Leonardo DiCaprio, he's like this... I don't remember like exactly if he's like some kind of like... He's like a spy, but like a mind spy. like
that's a cool job.
Like he's like he can no longer return to United States because of his espionage thing, corporate espionage, right? But he's getting it by going into the minds of these entrepreneurs or business owners, and it's just it's got like such a cool element because it's not like your typical what the heck is going on dream like themed film or show. It's like they give you like this explanation about your subconscious, and like I love the scene with Leo and Ellen Page, or Elliot Page now, where he's kind of trying to assemble his team of Avengers, right? Sleep specialists, and to go into like the subconscious minds of like, these variety of, personas, like the guy, Ken Watanabe.
I just remember that opening scene, like the first sequence where they're, I forget where they are, but like, where it's like we're finding out that like there's these little signs that show.
Oh yeah, the totems, right?
Yeah, the totems, yeah.
And like his totem was like a little spin top, and he'd spin it, and that's how he'd know if it was like, because again, you're in such a realistic situation where you can't tell the difference after a while, right? So he chases Ken Watanabe, and he finds like he's aged so much because he's like three or four tiers down, and I forget the actual calculations where they say like the first tier, like a day in real life is equivalent to like a week in that life, but on the fourth tier, it's like a day in real life is like an eternity. So he's literally dying in his mind, in his dream, right? But it's only been like a day in real life or a week in real life, So it's a crazy concept to even try to like create, creating a film on like dreams, right?
Have you seen Paprika?
Paprika, yes. Paprika was the inspiration, and I'd seen Paprika years ago, like when I was like into anime, and when Inception came out, I didn't even know it was like inspired by it until later. I was like, oh my gosh, these scenes are familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, they got it from the animated series, the animated film. But like I was saying, that scene where Leo is kind of taking Ellen Page's character, and they're already in that dream state, and he's like, your subconscious is the characters in your subconscious dream world will detect if you know that you're asleep or not. So the goal is to go undetected. So basically, you have created these like people in place. I think they call them pawns or something like that, and they can detect, like a swarm of people can detect if like you are like asleep and not realizing it, or if you're like you are like aware. They all of a sudden have like, they're like indicating like what, and they it's kind of like when I told you when I had a lucid dream and I was in a grocery store and I was telling people like, you're not real, you're fake, you're fake. It was the same way.
Yeah.
So when I saw that scene, it was like, whoa. We're in like the whole visual creative space. Have you ever, like when you're in school or have you ever been inspired or influenced by any of your dreams? Like, have you ever created something that you've seen in your dreams?
Yes and no. I've written down a bunch of my dreams, which I've hoped to create stories from. So not like a full dream journal, but just like large key points. So I've tried to turn some into stories, but I haven't actually like created like a full project based off of them. Yeah. But what about you? Have you?
I don't think that I've ever dedicated like a project to something I've dreamt about, but I feel like loosely a lot of the things that I do see in the dream world, some of it does kind of relay or like show in some of my work, because some of these things that I see, I don't see visually sometimes in my headspace. I get it from when I'm sleeping,
Really?
Yeah. Have you ever had dreams about time travel? You have? So the last like 2 or 3 different dreams that I've had of time traveling, they have felt so realistic that in the dream, the number one thing I always do, because I think it's real, and I tell the people in the dreams like I'm from the future, is I always tell them like, Google, Amazon, you need to invest in these companies. and they're always like, what are those, and I had a dream like that where
Back to the Future, you're like,
yeah, it was just, it's
Farmer's Almanac.
it's bizarre, but it's so bizarre that it feels real.
Yeah.
That you actually are like fully invested in your own narrative in the dream world where you're like, I'm a time traveler,
So I've never gotten to that point.
Oh,
like
okay.
I've time traveled in my dream as far as like me going from like one time to another, but I've never like
I've alerted people in
yeah,
the
I've
dream
never
space.
How kind of you.
Yeah, I always when I have those time traveler dreams, I always like, hey, this is gonna happen. Hey, invest in this.
Yeah.
And it's so real too.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What a good person, Anderson. Even in your dreams.
I know. Hey, I'm like, invest in Yahoo.
Crypto.
Yahoo, where are you at, Yahoo?
Crypto. Get into Bitcoin while you can.
But no, I think it's interesting, like how pivotal dreams can be. I know there are a lot of artists that, do things inspired or influenced from, their dreamlike world.
It's such a freeing state.
Yeah.
I think is why, you kind of just express yourself in many different ways.
I know you never follow. Did you ever watch Buffy the Vampire?
Of course I did.
Do you remember that they had this episode where it was all a dream?
Oh, I can't remember episodes like that. I remember loving it as a kid, watching it like almost every night.
Okay.
But I don't.
So
yeah,
there was one episode. I don't know.
Like that.
I don't know. It was towards the end of the series. And this episode was so crazy because the whole thing was like a dreamlike event. But the way they did it was so realistic because it'll be like a scene like this and then the character will turn and then the whole scene changes. And I'm like, that's real.
Yeah.
Like I've experienced that where like I'm sitting in like my car and next thing you know, when I turn, I'm like sitting in a chair and I'm like, I'm not in a car anymore.
Yeah.
I
think the most realistic dream-like enactment that I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, but the latest remake of Suspiria.
No, I've never seen that, no.
So they have a scene where they're trying to display what a dream looks like to some of the girls in the movie. Some of the girls, I don't know if it's like multiple girls or if it's just one girl, I can't remember, but someone's having a dream and they go into like a dream sequence and it's just random images compiled. Really? Yeah. And I was like, that's freaking accurate. Yeah. Just because sometimes you do have dreams like that where like nothing makes sense. Just you're seeing images or what you're hearing isn't matching with what you're seeing. Right. I think that's to me probably like the closest reenactment that I've kind of seen. Do you know one?
No.
Or do you think the Buffy
one
is the closest one?
The most standout. I know there was one recently. I can't pinpoint it. They did a really good job as well. Mm-hmm. But the Buffy one stood out because I remember thinking like, I go through that. That's very realistic, I hate those dreams where I have to go to use the restroom. Do you ever have those? Where
yes.
For some reason I can't fit into the stall.
Oh, no.
Or the stall panels are too short and like there's somebody like next to me, like up against me, and I'm like, yo, I gotta pee, and I hate those dreams. But it's always because I really actually have to go.
No, I've had the ones where like you feel like you have to pee and then you like see yourself in the restroom on the toilet and you're like trying to pee and you're like, why am I not peeing? I have to pee really bad. And then your body wakes you up and you're like, that's why. Thank God. Thank you sleep paralysis.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. I had to go use the restroom.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. For all the listeners out there, what are some of your favorite films that involve the dreamlike world? We'd love to know.
Definitely.
Any cool recommendations?
Any cool film?
Yeah.
Works.
And then, you know what? Also, a cool thing that we should do with all the listeners is, let's encourage like dream journaling.
Definitely.
To see if, there is a pattern that, who has a show all about dreams, and it's been quite a while, is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Did you know that?
No.
He started it, I think, back in like 2008
That's really cool.
or 9.
Yeah.
Because
was it when he made Inception or before that?
I think it was around that time.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I don't know if he still continued that project, but it was cool. I remember thinking like, oh man, I dream all the time. I have all kinds of weird experiences.
Yeah.
But it was just cool that somebody in that space.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I have to look for that.
Yeah. But I guess until the next episode, we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of the more uncanny things that we've experienced as well. With synchronicities. I don't know if a lot of you listening out there experience it.
Those are fun.
Those are always very weird.
Looking for patterns.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not even looking
not
for
even
patterns,
looking.
but just experiencing them and then noticing them.
Yes,
like, you
being
know,
more aware.
Because I remember the first time you introduced me to synchronicities, like what the actual, because they had been happening to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. Like when I first met you, they had been happening to me. And I mean, it's not like I talked to you about it. Like they were personal experiences. And I remember you asked me one day, like, if I was familiar with the concept of synchronicities. And I was like, no, what's that? And when you explained it to me, it blew my mind. And I was like, dude, yes, I know what that is. I didn't know that that's what it was called, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's cool. Like, you know.
I think Eric also was experiencing the same thing. And he's like, what? Yeah. So.
And there are things that like I said, like you're aware, but you're not really like noticing, like jotting down until you start to pay attention.
Yeah. Once it starts to reoccur, you're like, okay, something weird is going on.
What's happening? So.
And then, you know, everybody would be like, yeah, but it's because you're looking for it, you know, it's a coincidence. And you're like,
but is it?
I don't know. It's a little weird, but
if you guys have anything close to that, or if you want to share, you know, some of those film recommendations that we're talking about, you can reach out to us on IG, Twitter, and TikTok at enter, ENTER, the number 1 and 11, ELEVEN. We'd love to hear from you.
Cool. Well, thank you all for listening, and
this is the end of episode 3. Looking forward to, can you believe it? 3 episodes? Like, wow.